This is Command Post, a series of discussions about military matters from Time and the Center for a New American Security.
Michael, you at the Brookings Institution have been putting together this Iraq index for years. That's a real neat chart that shows us how Iraq is faring. And in a lot of ways it's doing pretty good, but it ain't doing great. What are the risks that whatever the gains are that we have achieved in Iraq over the last 8 years will come tumbling down? How secure do you think what we have built in Iraq is after we leave?
I think the chances of it more or less holding together are better than 50-50, but certainly less than 90%. And the question, therefore, I think is what happens if it starts to go south? Does it fail catastrophically, or is there some sort of intermediate, landing point where it arrives without us? Because I don't think we're going back. So whatever is happening now, it's going to be our last military role. And if the Iraqis wind up going back to civil war, whether it's Arab-Kurd or Sunni-Shia or some mix of all that, then I think you get some kind of a Bosnia-like partitioning at the end. And along the way, a lot of ugliness. That's sort of the serious scenario. The more likely one is that you get something well short of democracy, maybe more like a Musharraf or a Mubarak or something else even a little less benign, but it doesn't totally turn into war. But it certainly is not something we are proud of or feel like even stabilizes the region in any way. So if I was going to assign rough probability, 60% that it's tolerable, gradual progress, 10% disaster, and 30% some kind of, neither fish nor fowl, not democracy or dictatorship, not war or peace.
Well, I think it's really up to the Iraqis now. We've done what we can. Key thing is, do they threaten the region? Whatever happens there, does it undermine the region and provoke some sort of, war? I think one of the things we learned in Libya, we're not the only ones impacted by what happens in that part of the world, and the international community needs to deal with it. But I can't emphasize it too much. It's really up to the Iraqis. We've done what we can. It's out of our hands. And what the decisions that they make, basically, we only have to look at them in terms of our national interest.
Larry, you said America did what it could in Iraq. Final go-round. Was it worth doing?
Heck no. If you had told the American people, we're going to Iraq and we're going to lose 4,500 Americans, 30,000 wounded, hundreds of thousands with mental problems, kill several hundred thousand Iraqis and spend, $1 trillion so Iraq could have an election, you'd have been laughed out of the ballpark.
I can't disagree with that. I mean, Larry does a great job of summarizing the horrible costs. And a lot of them were preventable. So I'm not going to just say yes. I'm going to say I hope that the balance sheet looks okay and passable over the next few years. For the reasons we've been discussing today, it's too soon to venture that. And even if Iraq turns out okay, I wouldn't want to sound insensitive to the horrible costs, which were so high and higher than they should have been. Measured against sort of the status quo of where Iraq was in the 90s, it's hard to say that all this cost was worth it. But measured against what might have happened, and I don't want to sound too much like Dick Cheney, but nonetheless, things were not necessarily stable at their 1990s level.
And don't forget, Iran is a much bigger country, much bigger threat. Their power's been increased in the region. At the end, the balance of power is less favorable to us than it was even with Saddam in power.
I'm a little more hopeful on that point. I do think Iraqis are pretty nationalistic and that Iran does have influence, but there's a check on it. And if the worst thing is that, Iraq is semi-Finlandized, I can live with that. What I would have had a harder time living with is Hussein with a nuclear weapon. Measured against what might have been, there's a little better case for this, provided that Iraqis now make use of the opportunity they have.